Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about children and hip-hop. So, my youngest son is 11 now, and he's in 5th grade, and this last weekend we were out together, and we were returning from an event, and we were just driving back toward our home in the suburbs, and so we're going down this one street, and it's a suburban street, so we're not going real fast. And this black SUV passes us in the opposite lane, going in the opposite direction. And when that SUV was about, 30 feet behind us, maybe 50 feet, going the opposite direction, we hear, woot, woot. And my 11-year-old son looks over to me and he says, "That's the sound of the police." I was like, what? And then I just laughed, because essentially, he had called out a classic hip-hop song, and I was like, how did he know that? Of course, that's the chorus. And, I'm a huge hip-hop fan, and so, woot, woot, that's the sound of the police is, one of the most absolutely classic bars in all of hip-hop, right? And I was just amazed that my son would know that. And it was just a real moment of delight, and the reason why was, I love hip hop. It's been a part of my life since I was in my teen years, and so like 83, 84 was about the beginning of my interest in hip hop music, and to this day, I really enjoy hip hop. I'm really learning a lot more about hip hop now, and the history of hip hop and the culture of hip hop through HipHopDX, which is a really, really excellent YouTube channel that covers the history of hip hop in depth, and. But the thing that really delighted me about this situation was, with my son recognizing that song and calling it out, was one of the things I've learned as I parent. I have 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and I've parented for 2 decades. My oldest son is like, I think he's like 22 now, right? And and it's it's pretty amazing. So. I've seen a lot as a parent, and one of the things I've realized is that your interests very rarely translate to the interests of your children, right? And one of the things too is that there's an inversion, and I think very few people realize this, but as a parent, the idea is that the more you show them an interest, and the more in depth you show them that interest, the more likely your children are to have that interest, right? And that's absolutely incorrect, right? So I feel like the formula is, if you have an interest, you need to show that to your children once or twice and say, this is a thing. It exists in the world. You do not want to communicate, it's important that you love this. This is the best thing in the whole world, right? And the reason why is it doesn't accomplish what you want. You want your kids to have your interests, right? But one of the things, so some of my interests are tabletop role-playing games. None of my kids really, the vast majority of all my kids have played Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop role-playing games. It is a minor interest for they tolerate it. That's the best I can say. Right now, ironically, my oldest daughter in college is playing in a Dungeons and Dragons game, which I think is very interesting. But the reality is, it's very rare that the things you care about translate to interest for your kids, right? And the more you do to make sure that that does happen, it's almost like the less likely it will actually happen, right? And so, so my interest, tabletop role-playing games, comic books, hip hop, just none of these things really mean very much at all to any of my kids, right? What do they care about? They care about anime and video games. Now, and neither one of those was really anything I ever brought to them and said, this is important, you should love this, right? But it is really interesting because when we heard, and by the way, that black SUV, so that was an undercover police officer, and when we heard that sound, I looked in my rearview mirror, and that thing was lit up like a Christmas tree because it was an undercover police officer. So he was right. Woot woot was the sound of the police, right? He was exactly right? It's just really funny. And so basically, it was really interesting that he knew to call that out. Now, it made me, it reminded me that literally 4 years ago when he was 7, maybe when he was 8 years old, that song was on when we were driving somewhere, and I explained to him the importance of it. I'm almost positive that conversation I had with him 3 to 4 years ago is not what prompted his response yesterday. He must have heard it somewhere else, but it probably triggered that memory, right? That of woot woot, that is the sound of the police. And, because I played the whole song for him, and explained why it had significance within the hip-hop culture, right? And it was just a really delightful moment. And the reason why is, once you realize that your kids are really not going to have the same interest as you are, you kind of give up on it. You make sure that they see everything you're interested. You put it in front of them, and you keep your fingers crossed, right? But it was really delightful to me because a lot of times you really feel as a parent it's in one ear, out the other. The things that are important to you are not going to stick. They're going to pick their own things. But I was amazed that, that this very classic hip-hop song and this wonderful, one of the best bars ever written in hip-hop, was in my son's head. It was just amazing. So, children are true delight. I really feel like if you're going to experience humanity at its peak levels, being a parent is just absolutely, there's no experience like it, and it will fill your days with delight. It truly will. So I was just wonderfully surprised that my son knew, woot woot, that's the sound of the police. Take care.